Assalamu alaikum students. Welcome back to revision session. Previously we have seen about British policy and how did people affect by the British policy. Now today we are going to discuss about a mutiny becomes a popular rebellion. It was all began from a small soldiers mutiny when some soldiers in Beirut actually disobeyed an officer. They became mutinous in the army and all the revolt was begun. How did? Let's see. Through struggles between rulers and rule are not unusual. Since centuries in history that many times that rulers and rule, those people and public, sometimes clashed. Sometimes such struggles become quite widespread as popular resistance so that the power of the state breaks down. And many times due to people's resistance, many times those emperors and kings had to dethrone themselves. A very large number of people begin to believe that they have a common enemy and raise up against the enemy at the same time. And people believed that they had one common enemy, none of others but British. For Indian people, different sections of the society, rich, poor, peasants, landlords, laborers, kings, nawabs, for different sections of the society, but they had their different problems. Yes, they had their own problems, different problems. But among all these things, they had one common enemy, British, East India Company. For such a situation, to develop people have to organize, communicate, take initiative and display the confidence to turn the situation around because situation was against the Indian people and they wanted to turn it around. Such a situation developed which went against the British. Such a situation developed in the northern part of India in 1857. After 100 years of conquest and administration, the English East India Company forced a massive rebellion that started in May 1857 and threatened the company's presence in India, popularly known as Revolt of 1857. Sepoys mutinied in several places, beginning from Meerut, and a large number of people from different sections of society rose up in rebellion. Some regard it as the biggest armed resistance. Some historians even today regards as the biggest armed resistance to colonialism in 19th century, not only in India but in anywhere in the world. The biggest armed rebellion in 19th century against colonialism in anywhere in the world. Let's see how was it began. So from Meerut to Delhi, on 29 March 1857, a young soldier, Mangal Pandey, was hanged to death for attacking his officers in Barakpur, Meerut. Some days later, some sepoys of regiment at Meerut refused to do the army drill, parade and drill. They refused to do the army drill using the new cartridges, bullet for rifle. Why so? Which were suspected being coated, those cartridges coated with fat of cows and pigs. And as we know that cow is an holy animal for Hindus and pig is forbidden for Muslim. So if using of cartridge that actually violating both of the religions. So 85 sepoys were dismissed from service and sentenced to 10 years in jail for disobeying the officer. This happened on 9th March 1857. According to military law, those 85 sepoys were dismissed from the service, and according to military law, they were sentenced to jail for 10 years. And their crime was disobeying officers. The response of other Indian soldiers in Meerut was quite extraordinary. What they did in response of this? What were the reactions? So, on 10th May, the soldiers marched to the jail in Meerut and released the imprisoned sepoys. They attacked and killed British officials. They captured guns and ammunition and set fire to the buildings and properties of the British and declared war against Firangis. Firangis, word used for foreigners, and basically it reflects attitude and contempt. That this word with feeling like the Firangi, like that. The soldiers were determined to bring an end to their rule in country. But who would rule instead of soldier? They determined soldiers that now they didn't want any longer British rule in India. But who would rule instead of them? Because they annexed the kingdom, many dynasties were actually collapsed in India. So who would rule this India? Who would take the command of India? And answer of this question was the Bahadur Shah Zafar, the Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar. Sepoys of Meerut rode all night of 10th May to reach Delhi in the early hours next morning. There is around 50-60 kilometer distance between Delhi to Meerut. So they rode all night long. As news of their arrival spread, the regiment stationed in Delhi, military regiment located in Delhi, also rose up rebellion. They became rebellion. They rose up rebellion. Again, British officers were killed in Delhi. Arms and ammunition seized. Buildings set on fire, and triumphant soldiers gathered around the walls of Red Fort, where the Badshah lived, Bahadur Shah Zafar. Demanding to meet him, the emperor was not quite willing to challenge the British power. He knew about the British power. But the soldier persisted. They wanted Bahadur Shah Zafar as their leader. They forced their way into the palace, and not to harm the king, not to harm the emperor, but they proclaimed Bahadur Shah Zafar as their leader. The aging emperor had to accept demand. He wrote letters to all the chiefs and rulers of the country to come forward and organize confederacy of Indian state to fight the British. The single step taken by Bahadur Shah Zafar had great implications because the Mughal dynasty had ruled over a very large part of our country and for many centuries. Most small rulers and chieftains controlled different territories. Nawabs, they had controlled their territories. Many small kings, even from Rajputana kings too. They had their territories, but ultimately they were subordinate of Mughal ruler. They ruled their territories on behalf of Mughal ruler. And they were actually protected by Mughal ruler. Threatened by expansion of British rule, many of them felt that the Mughal emperor could rule again. they too would be able to rule their own territories once more. If Mughal rule established in the country, they had hoped to get their own rule back. They wanted to rule again under the Mughal authority. The British had not expected this to happen. They thought the disturbance caused by issue of the cartridge would die down, like many other issues rose and died before. They expected same. But Bahadur Shah Zafar's decision to bless the rebellion changed the entire situation. Often, when people see alternative possibility, they feel inspired and enthused. It gives them the courage, hope, and confidence to act. That is for any human being. When we see that possibilities of dream becoming true or possibilities to become wish becoming true, at that time we act, we feel inspired, we feel enthusiastic, and it gives us hope, courage, and confidence. And similar thing happened to those rebellion. Now let's see how did rebellion spread. After the British were routed from Delhi, there was no uprising for almost a week. It took that much time for news to travel. Then a spurt of mutinies began. Regiment after regiment mutinied and took off to join other troops at nodal points in Delhi, main points in Delhi. Kanpur, Lucknow, in nodal points like Delhi, Kanpur, and Lucknow, main points, main centers. After them, the people of the towns and villages also rose up rebellion and railed around local leaders, jamindars and chiefs who were prepared to establish their authority and fight the British. Nana Sahib, the adopted son of Peshwa Bajirao II, who lived near Kanpur, gathered armed force and expelled the British garrison from the city, military garrison. He proclaimed himself as Peshwa, although he was an adopted son, which was denied by British. Who was denied by British. He declared that he was a governor under Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar. He proclaimed himself as governor under Bahadur Shah Zafar. In Lucknow, British Qadr, the son of deposed Nawab Wajid Ali Shah, was proclaimed him as the new Nawab. He too acknowledged the sovereignty of Bahadur Shah Zafar. He accepted Bahadur Shah Zafar as his superior. His mother Begum Hazrat Mahal took an active part in organizing the uprising against the British. In Jhansi, Rani Lakshmi Bai joined the rebel sepoys and fight the British along with Tatya Tope. And Tatya Tope was the military general of Nana Sahib Peshwa. Peshwa because he proclaimed himself as Peshwa. The British were greatly outnumbered by the rebel forces. They were defeated in number of battles. They convinced the people that the rule of British had collapsed for good and gave them confidence to take the plunge and join the rebellion. A situation of widespread popular rebellion developed in the region of Awadh particular. On August 6, 1857, we find telegram sent by Lieutenant Colonel Tytler to his commander-in-chief expressing the fear felt by the British. In his word, our men are cowed by number of opposed to them and endless fighting. Every village is held against us. Jamindar have risen to oppose us. So this situation described, Lieutenant Colonel described in his telegram to the commander-in-chief. Many new leaders came up, like Ahmadullah Shah, a Maulvi from Faizabad, prophesied that the rule of British would come to an end soon. He called to the immigration of people and raised a huge force of supporters. He came to Lucknow and fight the British. In Delhi, large number of Ghazi, Muslim religious warriors, came together. Warriors, they fight for truth, they fight for justice. So they also came together to wipe out the British. Bakht Khan, a soldier from Bareilly, took charge of large force of fighters who came to Delhi. He became key military leader of rebellion in Bihar. An old Jamindar Kunwar Si joined the rebel sepoys and battled with British for many months. Leaders and fighters from across the land joined the fight. So this is how the small mutiny becomes popular rebellion. Next company's reaction we will discuss in revision next revision session. Stay tuned. Thank you so much.